You think dragging a rifle makes you a soldier? One team leader scoffed. You're dead weight with dog tags. They laughed. She didn't. Sergeant Elise Grant just adjusted for wind and waited. Minutes later, 3 targets appeared before the others even chambered around. She fired 3 times. No hesitation. No mistakes. The woman they called a burden had just saved a mission with 1 breath and 3 bullets. She was calm, quiet, too inexperienced for their liking, but she was the reason they walked out alive. This is the story of the ghost they tried to erase, until the silence spoke, and her rifle answered louder than any doubt. By the time Sergeant Elise Grant stepped off the transport at Ravenstone Training Grounds, the whispers were already in motion. They clung to her name like static in the desert wind, soft, sharp, half-laughed behind the hand. She was older than most of them by nearly a decade. Not old, exactly, but in a place built for 20-somethings with fresh egos and louder boots, Elise moved like someone who knew how to conserve energy because she'd already burned through her margin years ago. No one said welcome. No one offered a hand. Instead, they called her charity slot, as if someone upstairs had bent the rules to give her one last shot before the system quietly ushered her out. As if experience was a handicap. As if calm was weakness. She said nothing. She stowed her gear with clinical precision. Not fast, not slow, just deliberate. Her movements unnerved the others more than a raised voice might have. They were used to noise. Elise brought none. At the range, her slot was dead center. Visible, exposed. A quiet dare. Corporal Martinez, barely 24 and built like a recruitment poster, leaned over to the next recruit. Bet she still uses iron sights. Elise didn't look their way. She was already checking elevation, adjusting for the crosswind that most of them hadn't noticed yet. 30 yards out, the targets blinked red. They were fast, erratic, punishing even for top-tier shooters. Watch this. Martinez smirked, lifting his rifle. Elise didn't. She didn't flinch when his shot rang out and missed by half a breath. She stepped forward, slotted her round, and fired. 1 shot. No setup. No warning. The target dropped before the echo faded, and then another and another. 3 red lights extinguished. 3 shots. Not hurried, not proud, just precise. She walked off the line without saying a word. Behind her, the whispers paused, not out of respect, but confusion, like maybe they'd misjudged the math on this one. Elise didn't smile, didn't blink. She hadn't come to Ravenstone to be accepted. She came because the range was the one place that still listened when she spoke, and her rifle didn't stutter. Ravenstone was built on humiliation. Not chaos, not failure, just a careful, public unraveling of whoever didn't fit the mold fast enough. Here, mistakes were broadcast, paused, replayed, dissected on screen while the rest of the unit watched. Victories, on the other hand, disappeared like smoke. You could hit 10 out of 10, finish a course 20 seconds ahead, and all you'd get was a nod, if that. Elise learned this quickly. She was paired with Private Decker for the first live-fire run. Decker moved like a weapon without a manual, fast, loud, and easily distracted. He broke formation twice before they reached the second marker, missed his cover cue, reloaded in the open. She compensated, filled his gaps, adjusted on instinct. But when they reached the final checkpoint and the instructors began reading out feedback, only one name came up. "Grant," one of them barked, voice dry. "You let your partner drift out of sync." She didn't argue. She knew the rules. At Ravenstone, you don't explain. You absorb. Then you fire better next time. By week's end, her scores were higher than anyone's. Her precision was surgical, but precision bred resentment. The others started falling away, half respectful, half bitter. They called her robotic, said she didn't belong in recon, that she'd be better off writing sniper manuals for people who actually had blood in their veins. She listened, she kept shooting, and then came the echo test. It was optional, technically. A challenge reserved for elite marksmen, 3 targets, 30 meters, shifting angles, timed breath control. Blindfolded. No one expected her to try. When she stepped onto the range and tied the cloth over her eyes, a few laughed. Elise listened, felt the weight of the wind on her cheek, counted the seconds between gusts, then lifted her rifle. The first shot cracked. A second, a third. All 3 targets dropped before anyone fully registered she'd begun. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was heavy, different. She lowered the rifle, removed the blindfold, and walked past the line of stunned recruits. No one said a word. Because for the first time, the silence wasn't just Ravenstone's. It was hers. The mission was supposed to be routine. Urban infiltration sim, layered objectives, 0 casualty tolerance. Standard drill for Ravenstone. But like most things on that base, it unraveled by the second checkpoint. The lead breached the wrong door. The comms relay dropped mid-call-out. One teammate fired early, another ducked late. Chaos bled through the corners, and by the time the smoke settled, 4 recruits were out of position. 2 were wounded, and the extraction plan was blown apart. Elise didn't panic. She never did. She recalculated mid-movement, cleared the corridor solo, repositioned their medic under cover, and executed a single suppressive burst that bought just enough time to fake an evac and drag their asset out through a side route the instructors hadn't even mapped. It wasn't textbook, it wasn't pretty, but it worked. They made it home. She didn't expect praise when it was over. She'd stopped believing in that kind of closure long before Ravenstone. But what followed was something colder than silence. The debrief lasted 6 minutes. No footage, no tactical review, just a whiteboard with no names and a brief nod from the trainer in charge. "New assignment," he said, sliding a folder across the table toward her. "Sector 11, limited resources, higher difficulty." No feedback, no questions, no mention of what she'd done to keep the team from collapsing entirely. The folder felt thinner than the last one. Fewer support options, shorter windows, higher risk profile, no explanation. And that was the point. The system wasn't malfunctioning, it was operating perfectly. Push the square pegs until they snap, and if they don't, just sharpen the angles. It wasn't personal, it was mechanical. Grind, reassign, repeat. They weren't trying to help her grow, they were trying to watch her disappear. But Elise didn't come to Ravenstone for recognition. She didn't come to be part of the inner circle or make a name on the range leaderboard. She came because there was still work no one else would touch. Missions no one else would take. And someone had to be the one who kept going when everything else fell apart. So she opened the new file, read the details in silence, and nodded once. Then she packed. It was supposed to be another controlled exercise. Low-light urban extraction, simulated hostiles, full stress environment with blank rounds and tight comms. Ravenstone's specialty. The kind of drill designed to expose hesitation, smoke out panic, and chew through cohesion like sandpaper. Elise knew the layout before the first step. She'd memorized the floor plan, accounted for lighting angles, even predicted which of her teammates would forget to clear their corners. She didn't run drills, she anticipated them. But this time the variables didn't follow the script. Halfway through the breach, just as the hostile targets popped on the upper floor, headlights flickered at the end of the block. Real ones. A civilian sedan, late model, idling too long. Someone had misread the perimeter map. The car rolled forward, two silhouettes inside, an adult in front, and in the back seat, a child. The instructors didn't react. The range control officer didn't cut comms. No one moved, because this wasn't supposed to happen. Inside the simulation house, one of the recruits panicked, fired 2 rounds, blanks but loud enough to pierce nerves. Someone else screamed, "Contact," and swung their barrel toward the window. And Elise moved, not out of panic, not out of fear, just out of something deeper, quieter. She dropped to a knee in the alley and shouted once, "Civilian!" But no one was listening. She raised her rifle, eyes locked past the glass, saw the flash of a real muzzle in the window across the courtyard. Someone who wasn't part of the drill. Not military, not authorized. One shot, clean, immediate. The threat dropped, a body slumped. The child in the car screamed. The street went dead silent. Range control shut it down seconds later, finally catching up. At debrief, the instructors muttered about protocol breaches and situational confusion. No credit was given. One called it lucky timing. Another blamed poor coordination. But the drone footage didn't lie. Elise had moved first, shot last, and saved 2 lives. They buried the footage in a routine folder. But someone up the chain saw it. Not a trainer, not an evaluator. Someone else. Someone watching for ghosts who never missed. And Elise had just crossed a line no one else dared to touch. The summons came just before dawn, slipped under her door in a plain envelope. No seal, no header, just a single line written in clean block print. Report to Hangar 3. No gear required. She was expecting a reprimand. Maybe a final warning. After the civilian incident, the silence from command had stretched too long, too tightly wound to be ordinary. But Elise didn't flinch. She folded the note once, slid it into her back pocket, and walked to the hangar without a word to anyone. Inside, the lights were dim. No instructors. No briefing screen. Just a long table with a rifle laid out in the center. Matte, black, custom grip, suppressor already attached. Beside it, a file folder, thicker than most, marked with red tape and a name she didn't recognize. Project Sunfall. A man waited in the shadows, not in uniform. Civilian clothes, posture like someone who'd traded salutes for secrets a long time ago. "You're not being punished," he said, voice low. "You're being reassigned." Elise stepped forward. She didn't reach for the file. She waited. He opened it for her, flipping through pages too quickly for her to read. Maps, photos, dossiers blurred in motion. Then he stopped on one. An image from the urban extraction drill. Her kneeling, her shot. The child in the car looking back. "You reacted like someone trained for more than drills," he said. "Like someone we haven't had in years." He gestured to the rifle. "No rank, no unit, no patch, but there's a purpose. Deep field recon. Off-the-books interventions. You won't make reports. You won't be named in debriefs. You'll just do the work that has to be done before anyone else realizes it needs doing." She said nothing. He slid the rifle toward her. "You'll leave tonight. No manifest. No destination will confirm. There's a team. You'll meet them there. Or not." Elise picked up the rifle, checked the bolt, balanced the weight in her hands. It felt like clarity. She nodded once, turned, and walked toward the waiting transport with nothing but silence behind her. No questions. Just the kind of assignment they only offered to ghosts. There was no welcome brief, no insignia, no introductions. Just a cold mountain facility buried beneath a decommissioned comms station and a keypad code Elise wasn't told, only shown once. The door opened with a hiss like something exhaling secrets. Inside, her new squad didn't look like much. 6 of them, scattered around a stripped-down hangar made into a war room. One leaned against a wall, chewing a toothpick with too much tension in his jaw. Another cleaned a blade with practiced indifference. Two sat at opposite ends of a table, like magnets pushed apart. No salute. No names. Just glances sharp enough to cut through whatever past they were all trying to forget. They weren't a unit. They were what happened after the paperwork ran out. Pulled from dishonor, oversights, or brilliance no one had the patience to understand. A sniper stripped of rank after hitting a target command had sworn didn't exist. A comms expert blacklisted for refusing an order mid-op. A field medic who walked away from a mission, only to drag 3 civilians out of a collapsing village hours later. Each one underestimated. Each one angry in a way they'd learned to hide behind silence. They didn't trust Elise. Not at first. But trust wasn't something she needed, not to function. She rose with the sun every morning, alone, and ran wind calculations before the frost melted. She scouted terrain until the others stopped asking where she went. She mapped every angle of the compound in her mind. When the squad trained, she didn't correct them. She demonstrated. One clean movement, one precise shot, then another. She didn't tell them where to aim. She showed them what happened when you stopped guessing. And they watched, silently. The way soldiers do when something dangerous stops pretending it isn't. She never raised her voice, never claimed space, but slowly, when targets needed eyes or plans needed structure, the others started looking to her, not with deference, but expectation. Not a leader by title, a center of gravity. And without ever saying it, they started forming around her. Because in a place where trust was a liability, Elise gave them something rarer. Certainty. The mission brief was thinner than usual. 2 pages, redacted to the bone. An off-grid compound, buried in the folds of disputed territory. No satellite uplink. No comm relay. No fallback team. The kind of op people called a test, with clipped smiles and body bags standing by. The team reviewed it in silence. One of them muttered, "This smells like a burial with paperwork." No one disagreed. They went anyway. Insertion was rough. Wind sheer, 0 moonlight, only a local fixer's half-right coordinates to go on. By the time their boots hit dirt, the compound was already different than expected. Larger. Guard patterns tighter. Not a drug cell or militia stash, but something else. Clean, quiet. Too professional to be freelance. Inside, the team split. 4 angles of approach, overlapping sectors. Elise moved alone. 2nd floor. Low crawl through dust that hadn't shifted in weeks. She found the target room by absence. No noise, no heat signature, no heartbeat. Just a hunch and a locked door with power routed separately from the grid. She breached. Inside, 1 man. Tied to a chair. Eyes bruised but focused, wrists raw. Not scared. Calculating. He didn't ask who she was, he just said, "They won't let you take me." She asked one question. Why? He told her. The intel wasn't just sensitive. It was combustion grade. Names, coordinates, proof. Not of war crimes or strategy, but of double agents embedded high. Allies who weren't. Flags sewn on uniforms that didn't match their loyalties. Command radioed in when the uplink caught a blip. Extraction imminent. Confirm status. She gave it flat. 1 additional, alive, requires transport. The reply came cold. Negative. Leave asset. Exfil as planned. Elise didn't pause. She slung the man over her shoulder, shifted her rifle, and moved. 3 hours through terrain that fought every step. 1 engagement. 2 shooters, real, trained. Elise dropped them both without breaking stride. She didn't ask for fire support. Her rifle answered for her. They reached the evac point right as the sun cracked the horizon. Every body intact. Intel secured. No casualties. No compromise. When the chopper lifted, the man didn't thank her. He just stared and said, "You weren't supposed to be the one they sent." Elise didn't answer. Because she wasn't sent. She chose. It started with a rumor. A name no one could quite pronounce, tied to an op no one could confirm. A sniper who moved without sound, left no casings, and erased targets before the second sentry finished blinking. Some said she came from Ghost Recon. Others swore she was ex-SAE, burned off the books after a black op gone sideways. None of it was true. All of it was close enough. The name wasn't Elise Grant. That name didn't show up in systems anymore. Not in Ravenstone's archives, not in promotion logs, not even in the encrypted backend where ghost units kept their own informal roll calls. She'd been wiped clean, and not by accident. When someone asked Command directly, the answer came flat. No records of such an operative exists. But across the border zones, whispers traveled faster than facts. In safe houses, warlords muttered about her with nervous tones. A convoy driver in Georgia refused a night shift because the wind didn't feel right. A high-value target in North Africa changed homes every 6 hours, swearing he saw a glint on a hillside that never showed up on thermal. The only thing they agreed on was the shape. A silhouette, always female, crouched low to the ground, scope raised, unmoving until it was too late. They started calling her the widow, the breath, the blink. One mercenary with half a team left behind just called her the reason he doesn't sleep anymore. Elise never heard the names, never asked. She moved like she always had, quiet, clean, unannounced. If a name got attached to her shadow, she let it go. Her team didn't use it. They didn't say anything, really. When she entered a room, they straightened. When she lined up on a ridge, they gave her space. And when her shot rang out, once, always once, they advanced without needing confirmation. Elise didn't care about the mythology. She didn't build it, she didn't fuel it, but she moved through it like fog. Because when the wind changed and silence preceded violence, people finally understood what Ravenstone never did. She was never a burden. She was the warning they didn't hear in time. The call came in coded and broken. Low bandwidth burst, buried under layers of digital camouflage. One of theirs had gone missing. Not captured, just gone. Deep in a blackout zone where satellites coughed and GPS signals blinked like dying stars. No drones, no overwatch, no margin. It was the kind of retrieval most operatives turned down because no one ever said rescue without also saying body count. Elise didn't hesitate. She read the terrain brief, what little there was of it. Forested basin, 3 ridgelines, fog conditions after midnight, communications unreliable past 5 clicks. Last ping came from a shattered compound off the grid. No lights, no heat trace, no second chance if the entry went loud. She said 2 words to her team, pack silent. They moved in just past 2300, no NVG glow, no trail markers, only foot pressure, timed breath and memory. Elise led from the front, eyes scanning like she could see through the dark, not just with sight, but with something deeper. Instinct built in the quiet, honed by years of moving where most people panicked. 3 times they stopped. Once for motion sensors she detected by scent alone, burnt plastic and ozone in the air. Once for a tripwire buried beneath frost. Once when the air changed, ever so slightly, like the forest was holding its breath. When they found the compound, it was dead. Not destroyed, just still, like the threat was buried inside, waiting. Elise slipped through a broken pane at the rear. Her heartbeat didn't spike. Her steps made no sound. Inside, the operative was strapped to a radiator pipe, unconscious but alive, body half crumpled like he'd stopped resisting days ago. She signaled once. 2 hands lifted him gently. They exfiltrated the same way they came in, backwards through memory, not direction. The night didn't speak. Neither did the team. At the evac point, when the bird finally touched down, the man looked at her through swollen eyes. No rank exchange, no salute, just a whisper scraped from his throat. "Thank you." She nodded once. He never forgot her face, and he never told anyone who she was. Because some ghosts don't haunt. They guide. Ravenstone hadn't changed. Same gravel underfoot, same cracked walls and cold stares pretending not to see. Time passed differently there, measured in failures quietly buried and victories left unspoken. Elise didn't return with the orders. She wasn't summoned. She came back because the silence behind her had grown long enough to echo, and there were things worth passing on before the noise of the world tried to erase them. She walked the range alone that morning. The wind rolled low, pushing dust in lazy spirals across the steel targets. The same kind of day she arrived, back when they whispered charity slot like it was a slur. No one whispered now. Most of those voices were gone, transferred, washed out, forgotten, except one, a recruit, maybe 19. Lean frame, eyes that flinched every time someone barked. Elise had seen the roster. She knew the girl's name was circled for cut review. Too slow, too uncertain. Too much like the version of Elise they never gave a chance to become something more. She approached the girl after the final drill. No speech, no order. Just her own scope, scratched and weathered, handed over without explanation. The same one that had watched over borders, compounds, men who never saw her coming. The recruit blinked. "Why me?" Elise didn't answer. She just nodded once and turned back toward the perimeter. But before she left, she entered the old range bunker, still as cracked and forgotten as it had always been. She knelt near the back wall where past names had carved initials, numbers, curses. She didn't leave her name, she left a message, scratched into concrete with the edge of a utility blade. Be useful, be quiet, be ready. No ceremony followed, no medal, no commendation. Just a silence that settled like dust in the corners of the compound and a sense, subtle but growing, that something had passed through again. Something that didn't need applause. They once called her a burden. But burdens don't walk through fire and come out shaping the path for others. She was never loud, she was just undeniable.